So, with the Burton revival in full swing, thanks to Frank and Weenie, and now Big Eyes, which I'm very, very much looking forward to, let's go back to a time when Tim Burton was not such a polarizing figure in the film community. Let's go back to that magical Christmas of 1993, when he decided to bestow onto us this little gem that came from a poem he wrote. At the time, people didn't know what to make of it, but wow, has it ever exploded into possibly one of Disney's most profitable franchises. But the question is it truly warranting of all the hype? Let's find out. Sort of a twisted take on classic holiday specials, Tim Burton's Nightmare, directed by Henry Selick and written by his regular collaborator Carolyn Thompson, is a quasi-Christmas Halloween tale centered on the town of, well, Halloween and its premier citizen, the Pumpkin King, Jack Skellington. Tired of celebrating the same thing over and over again, Jack wanders off and ends up stumbling upon Christmas. Intrigued, he decides to bring it back home, and before long decides to take charge of it, abducting Santa to replace him and sending out gifts all over the world to boys and girls. However, in true Tim Burton fashion, things don't quite go according to plan. The performances here are top-notch, and leading the charge is the dual talents of Chris Sarandon and composer Danny Elfman as Jack, in his speaking and singing roles respectively. The two do sound alike, so the transition is very smooth, and they both give Jack a combination of authority, being such an important citizen, while also a sense of genuine wonder and excitement as he experiences this new idea of Christmas. Catherine O'Hara does similar good work with Sally, a Frankensteinian girl who longs for Jack and gives her a great deal of sympathy and a sort of maternal quality as she worries over Jack's strange behavior. However, the actor who steals the show here is Ken Page's Oogie Boogie, Halloween Town's gambling boogeyman. While I have some mixed feelings on the character himself in terms of the story, Page's performance is beyond question. He is throwing himself into this role and relishes in his delicious southern-flavored villainy, with a very charismatic delivery and singing voice that is just so hard to resist. And Ed Ivory as jolly old Saint Nick gives the character the right amount of warmth and cheer, while also giving him this irascible, grumpy old man quality, which is understandable given what happens to him over the course of this story. And so, moving along to the technical aspect, the film is done in stop-motion animation, much like, say, Wallace and Gromit, or the old Rankin and Bass specials, which obviously this is taking some cues from, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. Henry Selick effortlessly transitions Burton's drawings from the page to the silver screen, and the result is a world that walks that fine line between magical and creepy, a place that is nightmarish but you kinda want to visit. Despite black being a predominant color, it's actually very vibrant, reflecting both Halloween and the Yuletide season perfectly. And Elfman's score is no slack either, providing us with yet another darkly whimsical score alongside some songs, the first he got to compose in a good long while after ending his career in Oingo Boingo. While sometimes the lyrics can be a little bit basic, and frankly it doesn't help that this film came out around the time that people like Howard Ashman and Tim Rice were writing songs for Disney, there's a strange catchiness to most of them that is both fun yet also a little tragic, almost gothic. This Is Halloween, What's This, Kidnap the Santa Claus, and Oogie Boogie Song are all toe-tapping gems, and it's no wonder why they've become fan favorites. And now, to close things out, we arrive at the script written by Thompson, as mentioned earlier. This is where my sentiments on the film start to get a little bit fuddy-duddy and tricky, as I feel there exists this weird divide. The film is at once wonderfully simple and yet needlessly complicated. But not necessarily from a thematic or character sense, but rather how the story uses its different components and how it structures itself. At its core, Jack's story is super relatable. He's tired of the same old thing and becomes so enamored with something new, he doesn't fully evaluate the situation or think through his actions. Anyone stuck in a monotonous routine, be it at school or with work in a job that you may not especially care for, can easily relate to this. And it also sort of helps explain why this film has such a large adult fan base. Thompson and Selleck handle this angle well, and Jack is a proactive protagonist to boot, always pushing the story forward and facing things head-on, as opposed to just whining and crying about it, as can sometimes happen when you do these kinds of stories about disenfranchisement and rediscovery. Had it stuck more to the Miyazakian route as well as to the specials and fables it's obviously modeling itself after, and just taken this simple approach and focused purely on Jack's misadventures and the lesson he learns, it would have made for a fairly unique film in the Disney canon that was more about experiencing the world and these characters rather than a constantly moving narrative, with these really big set pieces and whatnot. But that would have meant the film would be in danger of not being able to stretch for a feature runtime to Disney's liking, not helped by the time-consuming nature of stop motion, as well as not being cheap either. So then the film adds in other elements that simply feel like they exist just for that, to stretch things out and to try and accommodate more to Disney standards. Not that it did it much good because it was released under the Touchstone banner, but well, that is what it is. The chief culprit here is Oogie Boogie. It's this strange crossword where he's easily one of the film's strongest assets entertainment-wise, and yet from a narrative perspective, he serves little function other than to give the final a climactic battle and be the token villain in a Disney production. He's introduced fully halfway in. There's really not much build-up to him before then, save for one little brief instance where you could just as easily assume he's some kind of background character. And save for the three henchmen and maybe a throwaway line from the mayor of Halloween Town, there is no clue as to what the backstory or relationship between him and Halloween Town is. None of the other townsfolk ever discuss or mention him anywhere, and even Jack mustn't be that bothered considering he's asked help from Oogie's goons. I could maybe buy him being some kind of outsider or pariah who is a law unto himself, maybe even a past Halloween Town king, but Lock, Shock, and Barrel hint that Oogie wants to topple Jack and take control. Not only does this feel like lazy exposition to try and justify Oogie's existence beyond his shadow in the opening song, but Oogie himself never remotely does or says anything to indicate that that's what his interest is in any way, shape, or form, and never does anything to actually undermine or ruin Jack's plan himself. His actions have no bearing on the lesson Jack learned. Bringing Santa to his lair was the idea of his henchmen, not Oogie's, and even his flow of information seems inconsistent. He seems to know enough about what's going on to know who Santa is, but apparently not enough to realize or even be aware of Jack's change of holidays and the opportunity for his supposed plan to come into action. It honestly feels like Oogie was a last-minute throw-in as if to guarantee Disney's backing. And what's annoying is not only are his sequences the most fun in the movie, but this problem could have been easily fixed with just a few tweaks in the writing, had they had Oogie actually come up or indicate to the audience himself what his plans are and how they fit in with Jack, rather than just having his henchmen briefly parrot it for no real reason, or B, perform just a few of those rewrites to add maybe one or two scenes, not very long, to make him a more active component in the story and have him affect the outcome. I really don't want this to come off like I'm knocking the character because he is so much fun, but his presence in the story undermines the simplicity of the moral by introducing extra conflict that isn't even relevant to the main one until the last 10 minutes for the token save the damsel in distress scene while fighting him on top of an admittedly cool roulette wheel. And his screen time takes away from more useful developments like, say, Jack studying Christmas, which, by the way, is it just me or does that sequence seem like it's out of order? Why would he feel disheartened by the townfolk first and cave in so quickly before he experimented with all the Christmas stuff and tried to study it? Wouldn't it make more sense to do it the other way around, so after trying to crack it, he then ultimately caves in? I don't know, something just felt a little off there. Or how about, say, how the townsfolk react to the whole idea of Christmas, spending more time with them and maybe getting to know them a little more. Or even Jack and Sally's admittedly underdeveloped and too easily resolved relationship. I understand that it's not the primary focus, but it would have been nice if this had been given a little more time to be fleshed out. Either commit to having a villain and have him play a real role to the story, or just cut him out and stay focused. In a film this short, that's important. This is storytelling 101. Look, I apologize on going off on a tangent, but it's something that does distract from the viewing experience for me. As I'm watching, I'm entertained, but when I stop and think is when the cracks start to show. However, the former takes the greater emphasis here. Nightmare is a very entertaining little story, and when it sticks to being about the spirit of the holidays and about Jack's dilemma is when it fires on all cylinders and it's at its most charming. The animation, the design, and the music all combine together to create a very distinctive world, and above all else, it's at least a fairly short film. So even when it does falter and go off in unneeded directions, or directions that ultimately don't have the weight they should have, it comes back around to the good stuff again, and I find myself coming back to it year after year. That says something when I can look past a sometimes patchy story and just get into the spirit and magic of Halloween Town all over again. In the end, I must award Nightmare Before Christmas a Silver Star. Barring some writing missteps, this is a very, very fine work and one of the best things to come from the twisted mind of Tim Burton. Things may not always turn out like they should, but we still got something great. And so we close out 2014's year of reviews. It's been quite a journey, and unfortunately it's going to be the last one for the dear old movie nut. More to come on that in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. And well, that does it for me. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, God bless, God save, and all that good jazz. Wishing you all the very best.